am Elizabeth Fry's Loomis Ellet. I'm a writer and a poet. I've been called meddling and vindictive, and I own it. I am an author and historian, the first writer to record the lives of women who have made significant contributions to the American Revolution. I not only recovered the history of women of that era, I recognized the importance of the preservation of these stories, which had been ignored by other American historians. I told the stories of women from every colony, from all social classes. And without them, we would not be here, and without me, they would not be remembered. At 16, I published my first book entitled Poems, and I translated poems from French, Italian, Spanish, and German. I also included poems of my own, and yes, I am fluent in all 4 of those languages, as well as English. The volume also included a tragedy in 5 acts based on the history of Venice. It was successfully performed in New York and other cities. I also contributed to several periodicals, including Knickerbocker, Lady's Book, and American Monthly, all of which were enriched by my writings. At the age of 17, I married the love of my life, William Henry Ellet, a chemist, Columbia College grad from New York City. We moved to Columbia, South Carolina, where my husband became a professor of chemistry and geology. At South Carolina College, that was in 1836, I published several books during that time: Scenes in the Life of Joanna of Sicily, a history of the lifestyles of female nobility. I believe was one of my favorite books. I did traveling throughout the United States and also did essays on that. After 9 years of enduring the South, I left my husband in the boring South and moved back to the wonderful New York City, where Poe's Raven was making him the darling of the New York literary salons, where he attracted the interest of that poet, Frances Sargent Osgood. I hate her. I found out the 2 married lovebirds published several poems to each other under, of all things, pseudonyms. During this time, I became infatuated with Poe and sent anonymous love letters to him. Despite spending time with Poe discussing literary matters, I became highly jealous of Osgood and began spreading rumors that Poe and Osgood were engaged in an illicit affair. Edgar showed no interest in me and found my love for him loathsome and did all that he could to repel me, scorn me, even though he printed many of my poems in a journal of his, which he edited. What a user! Well, one day, while visiting Poe, Virginia showed me some of Osgood's personal letters to Poe and pointed out some questionable paragraphs. I was jealous of Osgood and took matters into my own hands and contacted my nemesis Osgood and strongly warned her to beware of her indiscretions. Osgood did what she could to appease me and my vengeful nature, and sent 2 of her women friends to Poe to ask for those letters back. I also asked that my letters be returned by Poe. The lovely creep gathered up all my letters and dumped them on the porch at my house. Well, Osgood's husband, Samuel, decided that he would sue me if I didn't formally apologize, so of course I retracted my statement in a letter to Osgood saying, the letter shown by Mrs. Poe must have been a forgery created by Poe himself. I then suggested the incident was because Poe was intemperate and subject to acts of lunacy. I was known to spread the rumor that Poe was insane, and eventually it was reported in all the newspapers. Poe got what he deserved for rejecting me. What was my relationship with Poe? Unrequited love, what do you think? And hate? Well, even though my letters had been returned, I was still bent on revenge. I asked my brother, Colonel William Loomis, to intervene. William did not believe Poe had already returned all those letters to me and threatened to kill Poe. He and Poe were actually supposed to have a duel, but it never happened. What is my theory about what happened to Poe and what caused his death? Very simple. As for who murdered Poe, I believe Poe was murdered by the brothers of his wealthy fiancée, Elmira Shelton. Both she and Poe were widowed at the time. Poe hot-tailed it to Philadelphia, where he was ambushed by Shelton's three brothers. They warned Poe against marrying their sister. Frightened by the experience, Poe disguised himself in new clothes, which is why it was weird he was found wearing secondhand clothing. And he hid in Baltimore for nearly a week before heading back to Richmond to marry Shelton. But those Shelton brothers intercepted Poe in Baltimore, beat the tar out of him, and forced him to drink whiskey, which they knew would send Poe into a deadly sickness. So that's who I think killed Poe. Probably served him right.